Good day, everyone. I am Kathleen Bolt, your host for the Medium's Porch. The Medium's Porch is where we bring on guest mediums and we examine and discuss, explore, and expound on the privilege, process, and power of spirit communication. I want you to check out the links at the posting of these particular podcasts, because in the links you will find places to find us and information about myself and our guest. So on our podcast today, we have a special guest, and he is coming to us to remind us of a lot of things based on his point of view, but also one of the things that I find important about our show here is to let people know that as mediums, we are humans. We are people. There's a huge variability. If you've been watching our shows, you will see already that there is quite a variety in the personality of the medium. There's a variety in the ways that we approach things, the way that we look at things, and yet there's also that commonality. So today we have James Flynn with us. He is a medium. He is also a licensed independent social worker. So welcome, James.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good, good. I'm
Good.
glad you're able to join us today because, as
Me
I
too.
was saying, good. We are looking at mediums and how we live in this world. Today, I'd like to introduce our listeners with a little formality here to let us know more about James. So James Flynn, James resides in Rocky River, Ohio. He has his bachelor's degree in social work from Gannon University and a master's degree from Case Western Reserve University in the field of social service administration. He is a licensed independent social worker. James works full-time as the director of early childhood services for a large nonprofit organization in Cleveland. He recently completed a 3-year certification process in the neurosequential model of therapeutics, which is a tool designed for helping traumatized children. James has been working as a medium for 12 years and finds great pleasure in working with spirit. He has sharpened his own mediumistic and psychic abilities by studying with internationally known mediums. He teaches mediumship development twice per month and has other classes that you'll see through Lilydale Assembly. His ability to engage spirit began at a very young age, but he did not build on these abilities until later in life, much like myself. I did the same thing, James. James is an ordained minister with the Church of the Living Spirit in Lilydale and is also a member of the Lilydale Assembly. So James, tell us, why mediumship? What calls you back to mediumship again and again?
Well, first of all, I really enjoy it. And I have to say that whenever I'm done giving a reading or when I'm done with my day of readings,
Mm-hmm.
I always have that feeling of, oh my God, I love this. It's not like I leave and oh, I'm really burned out today.
Yeah.
Or oh, I had a rough day. I always feel like this was kind of a calling. And so that's one of the reasons I keep coming back. Another reason is I just feel at this point, I don't know, I can't imagine not doing it. It just would feel weird. And I feel like I help people. I feel like a lot of people walk away satisfied, getting the closure that they felt they needed, or the affirmation that they thought they needed. I have had people say to me, this was more valuable to me than 6 months of therapy, one session, right? And when I first started mediumship, I never imagined that those were the comments, that's what was going to go with it. I was just kind of like, oh, this is really neat. I can, make contact to the other side for people. And it's this kind of fun. And then I realized that, there's a lot of responsibility that you carry if you're going to pursue this profession. And people are coming with some expectations, and different people want different things, but I think for the most part it just makes me happy to help people feel better.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, do you recall your very first reading that you had yourself? What was that?
um I do actually, yes. I had to think about that. I,
What's that
I
like?
It was it well, it was interesting. It some of it was really, really impressive, and some of it didn't, kind of fell flat. But I will say the stuff that was impressive was I was kind of like, wow, that was pretty cool. And I also learned from that first one that the people that you want to come through aren't necessarily the ones that are going to come through. And so I think I walked away from the first one maybe a little um, disappointed, not unimpressed at all. I was impressed, but I remember being a little disappointed because I was like, oh God, I was really hoping for this one and that one. But you can't command that certain spirits show up. Um, the people that did come through, though, it was pretty accurate. There were names that came through, and I was like, Aunt Ada, why? No, why would she come through? But it was on, right? So I do remember my first reading, and it kept me coming back. That was my first one-on-one, but there was also an event which was really very memorable. It was, you remember, Peggy Romito, have you heard that name
Oh,
ever? So she's out of Florida. She came to Lilydale, and this would have been probably 13, maybe 12 or 13 years ago, because it had to be 13 because I've been doing this for 12. So um, she had this, she did a gallery, a large group gallery at Lilydale. And I went, and she brought my father through, and it was one of those things where you were going, there's no way you could have gotten this information from any book or website or person. I mean, she brought stuff through that was just so incredible. So I walked up to her afterwards, and I thanked her. And then she's the one who actually got me my foot in the door. She said, oh, you should take my class tomorrow. I wasn't even planning on doing it. And she said, oh, I'm doing this psychic development mediumship class tomorrow all day. You should come. And I was like, oh, all right. So that's where that's how I kind of got my foot in the water. And it was through that live reading that she did.
the next day even, right? Talk
The
about
next day, I jumped in the next day. I was like,
meeting her and then lining things up for yourself,
mm-hmm. Yeah,
right?
yeah. And then she encouraged me based on that day. I did really well that day with the different exercises. Had no idea what I was doing, but somehow kept getting these hits, right?
Right.
It was interesting. And she said to me after, she said, you really should probably take some classes and build on this. And I did.
But when
That was
things
the
are fun, right? We always want to do them, right? We want to jump on board. We start to get curious. That childlike wonder starts coming up, right? Like, what is
yeah,
this? Where's it going to take me? And what else can I know? And wow, I wonder how much more I could do here.
that
Right? All of
exactly.
those things drive us into it. Sure.
Yeah, yeah, I did. I was kind of like, I didn't think I could do what I did today. And it was exactly that. Well, I wonder what more I could do with some guidance, right? So
Yeah.
yeah.
So having done mediumship, going back to your first reading, um, you now know why spirit doesn't always bring us who we want. Now, not that you would know in every specific circumstance, but you understand. Would you explain that to our audience why we don't always get who we want?
Right. And I don't know, I don't know that I have like, the answer,
Sure.
but I do think that sometimes spirits come through because I've had this happen where it wasn't who the sitter was really looking for. But when you kind of explored, you found out that the spirit coming through really had something to do with something that was going on in their life. So to give you an example, I had a lady who and she was like from the 30s, and and it wasn't common for women back then to kind of be top executives or build their own businesses. They were very limited back then as to opportunities. And she came through, and of course, as the medium, I'm trying not to doubt, right? Because she's coming through I mean, she was beautifully dressed as she came through, and she was going on about, getting the bills paid, and how important I can't remember all the things because it was so long ago, but it was all around business stuff. And the person sitting across from me said, you know what? She's not who I really expected, but it makes sense that she's coming through because I'm starting my own business. And so she put it together for me, but but she came in, she really was hoping to like engage with somebody else, but and I think we eventually got there, but that was a lady that was prominent in the reading. So a lot of times I think the spirit that you need to hear from is the one that comes through, and maybe they have a little bit more something to say. So, it would make more sense for a spirit who knew how to fix things, giving you the message about how you needed to fix some things around your house, as opposed to a spirit that didn't, right? I mean,
Right. Yeah.
so sometimes it's those reasons. Other times I have to say I don't know why. But I think for me, I think some of my experience is that on any given day, the vibration that I'm putting out connects with the vibration from the other side and might miss some of the others, just might happen that maybe the father was there, but I just couldn't, for whatever it was, I couldn't connect with them. And so, but yeah, there's
Yeah.
usually a reason.
Right. I've also wondered, I don't know if this has happened, you've noticed this as well, that sometimes the person that wants to speak to a particular individual is already on a regular basis in their daily life communicating, honoring, having some sort of emotional connection to them, either
Yes.
that or a rapport of some kind, feedback, signs, symbols. And sometimes I've seen that it makes me wonder is, oh, well, are the other people coming in because this is their chance to come through,
Yes. Yeah.
right?
Yes. That's a very good point, because I've gotten that feedback from people as well.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Well, I was hoping my dad would come through, but you know what? I kind of feel like I talk to him every day anyway, and he gives me answers. And I thought, well, that's, that's probably why you got your Aunt Clara, instead, or your grandmother on his side, or whatever.
And I do love what you said when it happens that the expert comes through, right? The family
Yes.
expert, the person that actually can add some credibility to the messaging information so that
Yes.
you'll look at it from a credibility standpoint point rather than a I was close with you, some emotional bond. You're looking at it from that level of credibility. So I love it when spirit shows up and makes those decisions. We don't have to make those decisions as mediums, which is, I just love being there. It's like, okay, what did you bring?
Right. Right. Yeah, I
Right.
know. It's
Yeah.
it's it's great.
Hmm.
I think too, the interesting thing is when animals come through, and
Yes.
and what an emotional connect, because you mentioned emotion, and that made me think of that a lot of times people are more moved when a pet comes through. Not to devalue, personhood or anything, but a lot of times that's what brings the tears, is, you'll have gone on, and I think for one, I think sometimes it's unexpected, but it really speaks to the deep connections that we do make with our pets. It's,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, they have such an innocence to them and they have our best interest at heart at all times, right? Sure,
Yeah.
okay, they're nudging us because they want another treat. Yeah, they're doing stuff like that. But yeah, when they really impact us in ways that are intangible sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they're our healers, right? Our little, what do they call them? Earth angels.
Yeah, right. Yes, absolutely.
Do you have any examples of some profound stories or memories of giving messages with spirit animals coming through?
It happens a lot for me. Um, I think when I can't think of a specific, but generally, like if you can target, the personality of the animal, because different animals have different personalities, because it's more than just saying, oh, I'm picking up on this cat on the other side. Um, and that may be some days all I get, but
Mhm.
if I can pick up on the personality and how the cat moved, and do you still have this cat's collar, and what color might it be? When you're picking up on those things, that really moves the individual, because they know, right? They're like, oh my God, that is my cat. I'm still working on pet names. We're always a work in progress, and I don't get them as consistently as I'd like to, but I'm working on that one. But yeah, I think I can't think of a specific, but it does happen a lot. And I had a lady just call. I did a half-hour phone reading, and it was all she wanted: her dog. That's what. And when she first called, I thought 30 minutes for a dog. I thought, I don't know if I can pull that off. But there was a lot there.
Right.
So,
Yeah, you didn't have to pull it off. Spirit brought it all forward. Right.
they did. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I think that it just does tend to happen a lot. And it's not that you're trying to throw people off when that animal comes through, but at the same time, my deal with spirit is whatever they show me, I say. So
Right.
um
What's your
it,
most unique animal that you brought through? Have you had any unique animals, pets?
yes. Well, there have been a couple of donkey. Um
Nice.
we had a donkey one time, and I'm trying to think what else there. I've had ducks, so maybe for some people that's not that unique. But the donkey, the duck, I'm trying to no, I was trying to think if there was. I can't recall a ferret. There, you know what? I got to think about that because I know there was one where I was like, "You had a pet? What?" I'm trying to think what it might have been a raccoon, but I think it was something even a little more like
Serious.
unusual.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
I got to think about that. I'm because I do remember my reaction. I remember this one lady I was reading, and I was just like, you know how you in your head, you're like, I'm seeing this thing, and you're thinking, oh, they're not going to understand that. And I remember saying it, and she was like, yeah, I had, and I can't remember what that was. So sorry,
The
kind of,
importance of us staying out of the way, right?
oh, very much so. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But it was kind of an exotic thing, and I can't. It might have been a monkey. I don't know.
Oh,
But
neat. That would be fun. That would be interesting.
yeah, it wasn't usual though, but I definitely remember the donkey. It
Yeah.
was very funny.
What you say about the personalities is fascinating in the process, right? Like when you get sometimes you'll get just a cat, the cat's coming in, or a dog. A dog, a good example, just to make it simple, is they come in. I love you. I love you. And they
That's it.
don't give a lot of sophistication to the information. And then I've had other ones that have come in and they're like people, especially the
Yep.
cats I tend to get more coming in with that full personality, like I'm in boss of this house, I am in charge, I am the boss. So it is fascinating, isn't it? And the
Yeah.
characters. So yeah, those unique animals, if you don't see them often, it can be hard to know what you've got when you've got it. Like if it's not in your purview, right? It can be
Yeah.
tricky, right? Like a flying
Yes.
squirrel. I know about flying squirrels, but I've never brought a flying squirrel through in a reading. If
Right.
I got a flying squirrel, I might mistake it for something else, a rodent or something else, right? Because
Easily.
I'm
Yes.
personally not familiar with this. So it's really important, I think, as you mentioned this, it's like we got to stay out of our own way, right? We've
Yep.
got to we've got to give it as oh, I've got this thing. Does this mean something to you? Here we go, right? Yeah.
Yep. And I remember the donkey came through. It was a live demo. So that was really fun for the audience,
I bet. Yeah,
because you just sign it through. I'm seeing a donkey. Do you understand a donkey? And they're like, I had a pet donkey. And of course everybody cracks up, you
that's
know.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, the unique evidence is a beautiful thing. Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. So, getting out of our own way, do you have lessons or knowledge or experiences you could share with us about that?
Yeah. So I think for me, I think that's the one of the number one rules of mediumship is for me to get out of my own way. And I kind of bring that back to, when we look at how the brain works, and they say mediumship really kind of comes from the right side of the brain. And the left brain is the side that kind of does analysis, right? And tells you right, wrong, all that kind of stuff. And so for me, I think I learned early on that I need to kind of get out of that analytical piece because, like you said, I'll see, oh, I'm seeing a giraffe. And then my left side goes, don't say that. They're not going to take a giraffe. And then
Right,
so you say it anyway. And it turns out they have a Christmas ornament. That's, mom left me this giraffe Christmas ornament, right? So, I try not to listen to that analytical side because that's the side that's going to shut me down. And that really kind of is my ego, you know, jumping in the way and
right.
saying, oh no, I know best. It's not possible. That giraffe isn't going to happen. So So yeah, so some of it's that keeping that analysis at bay, because I do. I mean, many times during the reading, I shouldn't say many, but several times there's an ongoing kind of, oh, don't say that, or do you think you should say this? So I try to stay out of any thoughts that would produce fear, you
Good.
know, because
Mhm.
I could get caught up in that. I could get caught up in, oh, am I really seeing this person? Am I sure that they're around age 80? Oh, I don't know. What if I say the wrong thing? You can really get in your way, mess yourself up with if that's where you go. And so for me, it's I trust what I see. I'm going to say what I see. The worst that can happen is the person on the other side initially says no, and I say, okay, hold that thought. I'm going to move on. We'll see.
Right.
We'll see what, this could mean something. So I do. I think that's part of it. And I think, um, getting in my own way too around my willpower, right? Like I don't want to assert my will into mediumship. I want to back off. I want to let spirit do the work. And you have to trust, right? There's just this relationship with spirit where you have to trust that they're going to give you everything you need. And when I'm not in, and I can, we were talking earlier and you said we're still human, right? So I have those days where I battle with that, you know, that hey, no, that can't possibly be, or spirit, you're wrong, or you can't, why did you show me that? And they didn't take it, like
Yeah.
that's the kind of stuff where I get in my way, I just have to trust that whatever comes through was meant to come through. Maybe I misinterpreted it, who knows, but it all came from spirit somehow. So that's kind of how I get my own way. And I think too, like if we were going to kind of draw out how do we get in our own way, um, you start to look at things like, do you get enough sleep?
Mm.
And are you willing to try to stay, well, for me anyway, this is what works for me, trying to stay healthy, right? So I know that I want to try to stay happy. I know that when I start to get crabby, my mediumship suffers. And so what are the things that make me happy? Exercise, right? Being with people, also giving time to myself, all those kinds of things. And I think that when I close my mind to what I would call self-care, oh, I don't need that, or no, I'm not going to take a day off, or that's me getting in my own way, because it all connects. It's all part of mediumship. Is just, for me anyway, it's not just mediumship. I have to take care of myself to be able to do it. And I have to be in the right mind space. So I kind of always say I can't afford, if I get angry, I can't afford to stay angry. I can't afford to have resentments. It's just not, it doesn't work for me. It affects my mediumship. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, you've said so many things. I'm like, oh, I want to talk about this. I want to talk about this. All
Oh,
these little branches and tangents my brain was going. And it's like, oh, but you keep listening. So one of those places is just to quickly address that word trust that you've said multiple times. One of the things that came up in my head is how I had to learn to trust myself first,
mhm,
and then I worked on trusting spirit. And I
mhm.
don't know whether it's better the other way around, but I know that's the course I had to take because I have that left mind that comes in, that strong self critic that comes in and says, yeah, this, that, the other, blah, 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 blah. And so I had to learn to trust whatever was coming to me was legitimate. Let's just put it,
Mhm.
because at first I was like, it just seemed arbitrary initially. The very first few times I brought information through, I was like, oh, I'm seeing this, I'm seeing this. None of it joined together, right?
Yep,
Because your
yep.
brain is used to things joining together. One thing leads to the other and makes a sequence, and the brain likes to make that sequence.
Yes.
So my self-critic was like hypersensitive to, oh my gosh, and of course the ego, right? Because I'm standing there and people are looking at me and I'm saying something. And then the personal responsibility of, I have so many things I want to say, but if I say them, how is it going to affect somebody else? And is that my responsibility? And so there were all these layers that I found.
Yes.
Did you go through those layers as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. Self-doubt, those kinds of things. Or we all have, I think it's like some days, you don't have the best day as a medium.
Right.
There's days like that. And as long as I've been doing this, sometimes I'll walk away from a day like that and I'm like, oh man, what is this? Like right away, I go into, and I know this has never happened. What my negative thought becomes, am I going to lose this ability? And it's like,
I had that thought.
no, the next session, you're just fine. The
Isn't
next
it
day,
classic for human nature to have like, maybe you're on social media and you've got like 3 million likes and you get all this praise and people are saying how wonderful, all these hearts. I like it, I like it, I love it, I love it. Good job, good job, good job. You get one person
yeah,
that says, that's not how I see it, or you've got a funny looking nose or something irrelevant. And your whole being is like, oh, do I have to do something?
yes, yep, yeah,
And
that's
it's about
exactly,
that discipline, especially if you're a professional medium, and you're working at this in service of others. You have to get yourself to the place where it's like, okay, you can go there. There's nothing wrong with going there, reading that, and taking a second going, is this useful? Is this true? Is this, I think it's important to not negate something immediately, but I also think we can't live there. We have to just keep doing our best work. And I got to tell you something, James, this is fun, in our audience. If you pay attention, you may get the same thing happening that happens to me a lot. When I have my worst feedback or my worst experience in anything I do, no matter what it is, I will find spirit will somehow, or the connection team, whatever you want to call them, very soon after, I get the exact opposite.
yeah,
I get like severe negativity, and then very soon after, I get severe positivity, and both of them are extreme. So what I've learned from that is every time that happens, spirit is just reminding me, stay the course,
yeah,
doing what you're doing. You know, it doesn't matter. Keep going, because it's too extreme on either end, right? It makes it unreal enough that I can say, oh, that's not about me, or I need to listen to it perhaps for a bit of truth or a lesson, but it's not about me per se.
right.
Have you ever had that experience where the synchronicities align, where you see spirit supporting you in the very moment you're having something negative happening?
Oh, sure. Yeah, absolutely. I get those supports through triple numbers. I know that some people are like, huh? Like angel number. I
Oh,
call them angel numbers.
oh, I got it. Okay,
Like
yes.
I'll be having doubts and then I look and it's 111 or it's
Okay.
333 and I'm like, all right. It happens way too often for it to not be a coincidence. When I was I went through a bout with cancer, and so you go through doubts, right? You have doubts about things, and you're like, why is this going to be okay? And I'm telling you, I saw triple numbers constantly when I was going through it, and I thought, I'm being reassured. This is all going to be okay. And the same thing happens with the mediumship. If I ever kind of, and it happens when I'm having the good thoughts, like, oh yeah, I'm getting affirmations. And then when you're having the bad ones, it's like, oh no, we're with you. Quit with this nonsense. Stop. Quit with this. You're fine. Keep going. People love you. This is why you fill up. This is why you have a waiting list. I mean, but boy, I tell you, you're right. One kind of reading that you're not very happy with, and it's real easy to kind of go, what's happening? And the other thing too is to not. I think one of the things that I sometimes struggle with is not feeling the pressure of somebody else's expectation. So they come and they sit in front of you, and right off the bat they announce something like, well, I just drove 4 hours, so I hope so and so, I hope the people I want come through. And right away it's like, ugh, like pressure. And I can't do that. I
Because you
have to.
want to satisfy that. As a person, you want to, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't want to disappoint you after you've driven 4 hours, right? um so I have to be aware that I'm feeling that stress. I have to do some self-talk around that. And then I clearly explain, I always clearly explain that I don't have control over who comes through. So I hope the person you drove 4 hours to see comes through. Are you okay with that? And they always are, usually, but And the thing is, most of the time the people come through that is expected. That's my almost, I gotta say almost always. But I found another thing to be helpful that around that with the Janet Nohavik. I took several classes with her, and one of the things that she used to say is when you have a day of readings where you felt like you weren't quite as on as you would like to be, she said you have to evaluate that. And she said, and there's a lot of angles. Was it me? Was it the sitter? Were they just kind of not able to take the evidence that you were getting? Was it a poor connection with spirit that day? Not that it was spirit's fault, it never is, but was it just an inability to, was there a different vibe that you couldn't connect with? Or was it a combination of all those things? Was there some personality thing going on? So I always found that very helpful when I felt like I haven't been up to par, that I sit back and I evaluate that reading in my head, and try to do that in an objective way as much as I can, right? By just me, the reader, because sometimes it's the sitter. That the evidence is coming through, and it's sad to me because some people do come in with tunnel vision,
Right.
and so if you don't get that one person, you could be getting the most amazing stuff about grandma, and they'll be like, so she was 6'2" and you just said her social security number, but I want my dad. I don't, come on. I've never got a social, by the way. I'm
Not
just saying.
impressed by the social security number, right?
Yeah, I've never gotten one. No, but I was just trying to say, I guess that was my
I
metaphor
know.
for you're getting all this
Love it.
incredibly specific info,
Mhm.
and they could be less impressed because you have not got the dad who they came to see. And that can be a little bit rattling sometimes, but again, you have to learn to live with that. It is what it is. And
Some of
you
it's the lack of understanding and education for our audience,
mhm.
or the sitters that come in, right? They
Yeah,
just don't know how this process unfolds, how it works, that
yeah,
it's an art as much as it's a science, right?
that's right.
There's a quality of discovery about it that leaves the door open for anything to happen, which
Hmm.
is quite cool, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, and so when I do my own readings and people contact me through an email, I send them an email in advance so that they don't have, and I say I get what I get, right?
Right.
So you know what you're getting into. Now, when I read at the store, they do all my scheduling. So I walk in, I don't even know who's walking through the door most of the time. And so that I wish there were a way to kind of sometimes let those folks know something in advance too. Not that it doesn't happen a lot. I'm just talking about those times, but
Sure.
every once in a while, if you can be proactive, I'm all about being proactive so every reading can be the best that it can be.
And we're offering our audience listening to this discussion an opportunity to understand the inside, the behind the scenes of what can happen, but it's not something that happens all the time.
Oh
It's
no.
like I said about the thousands of likes, and you get that one
Yeah.
awkward moment, or that one awkward comment. So it's like that for me and many of my friends as well. Like we've talked about that same thing. We're there 100% every time we go, and then we get what we get. And
Yeah.
then it
Yeah.
could be very high on the percent scale. It could be lower in terms of meeting the expectation.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
But
just how it works. But sometimes, I let people go. I mean, if I can sense in the first 5 minutes they have very high, that feeling you get where they come in with an expectation, I will explain it to them. And same thing when you said, does that work for you?
yep.
Is that okay? If I'm feeling they say okay, but I sense in their next response or their next energy reflection back to me as I continue to speak that it's not working, that in the next, between 3 and 5 minutes, I know whether this is going to work or not. And I
Hmm.
usually stop and ask them, because instead of saying, time for you to go, I actually ask them, I want to bring them into that experience of discovery so that they can understand that we're not gelling for whatever reason,
Hmm.
right? And it doesn't even mean that it's about that person, like you said earlier, right? It could be us, could be something else not aligning at a higher level or purpose level. I'll tell you a little story that happened to me one time around that. As I was doing a party, and a party at somebody's home. I was at somebody's home and doing demonstration for the group, and they were all family members. And I brought through the first and second spirit, no problem. Third person was getting a little kind of awe, like I was like having a hard time. It was like I was seeing through a fog, and I didn't understand that the fourth person, everything I said was wrong. And I would to the people anyway, the people
Mhm.
that were responding to me said no, 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 and I'm like, okay, that's odd because it feels like it did the last one, but it does feel a bit quirky. The fifth one, again, no, 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 no. We got a phone call that came through that a family member, the patriarch of this circle of women that I was doing, had been rushed to the hospital. So my next thought was, oh, everybody's put their energy, their spirit energy, all their family. Nobody's with us anymore. They went to go and support the person that needed the support.
Quite
That's all I
possibly.
could think of because it was just perfectly fine and then all of a sudden not fine, in terms of my
Right,
reception.
right.
And the information wasn't coming properly and I was getting things, but they were off base and they didn't understand them. They weren't able to understand them either. So it was a combination of just things not lining up. And then there was this event going on. And of course, all the women were panicked as soon as they heard the
Yeah.
call. And they were all picking up and leaving. So,
Yeah. But
so
that makes sense.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me.
Yeah.
That here you're on, and all of a sudden, wow, well, you were doing this for a family, right? So they're all concerned. Yeah, that makes total sense to me.
And then the patriarch, it must have been the family members checking out. So yeah, it's interesting. We don't have a lot of control
No.
except over ourselves. And this is where you said earlier, the self-love, right? The
Yes, absolutely.
monitoring the critic, taking care of ourselves. I know you had said a quote, I think I'll say this right, I hope. Um, Faith without action is dead. Is that what you had said the one
Yeah,
time?
faith without works
Faith without works. Okay, there
is
we go.
dead. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so you can believe it all you want, but you still have to show up for it, right?
Right. You got to do the work.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I can, faith is great, but and that the example I always give is, you know, I have faith that when I get in my car, that I'm going to get to the destination I need to get to. But I wouldn't close my eyes when I was driving. The work is I have to keep my eyes open. I have to stay alert. There's some work behind that. It's not just, literally a blind faith. Um, so you got to get the work in. That's right.
So do you believe mediumship is something that we can develop, meaning we have a little seed that we can
Yes.
grow? Or, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
The other option I was going to offer you is something I've been giving a lot of thought to lately. And I know Eileen Davies, who I interviewed for our last podcast, she was saying it's more like a revealing or that it's already there. And so I realize that puts you in a whole different context in terms of how you are approaching it philosophically.
Hmm.
So if we look at it from our perspective, walking on the earth plane, we can learn, grow, and improve.
Yes.
But if you're looking at it as we're a soul in the present and all things are simultaneous, that philosophy, then it would be an unfolding or an unveiling, like a lifting off of the layer
Yes.
because it's already there.
Yes.
So,
And
yeah,
I think it could be either, right? Because to me, that's what that seed is. It's
okay.
it
Yeah.
it so maybe unfolding is the better. Um, but I think everybody has it. I think everybody has the ability if they want to develop it. And again, it's just the path that you end up on, to want to or not. And I do think some people probably, like anything, the way I've looked at it is I can do algebra, but don't ask me to do advanced calculus. So yeah, I have some math ability, and I bet I could get to advanced calculus if I wanted to work at it. And I think for some it's the same with mediumship in a lot of ways, that you have this ability, and you probably could, if you just left to your own devices, you probably could do fairly well if you exercise it. But if you really work, it's going to grow. and it's going to get better, and you're going to explode. I mean, but having done development circles, I mean, I've got people who have been in circle for a very long time, and you see it's very slow development, but it's still happening. And then
Mhm.
you have other people who come in and they were ready to explode the minute they walked through the door. I mean, they by the second session, I just had this. We have two new students, and both so far they've both been amazing. Like they came in with this, oh, I've never done this before, I don't know. And we got them doing these acts. They weren't missing a beat.
Wow.
And yeah, and I thought that, and to me that's just kind of normal. There was a little more there. It'll probably be easier for them to broaden and develop, but still everybody's developed. That's regardless of where they were. So to me, I've seen it, and I believe it's possible. I think what shuts you down again is you get in your own way, right? So if you believe it, then that's the way it's going to be. So if somebody keeps saying, "Oh, I'll never be able to do that," or "I can't do that," well, can't. I have my partner always says, "Can't, never could," and
Good answer. A good
yeah,
response.
and
Yeah.
that's kind of where it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So yourself, you had said earlier you're working on getting animal names. Are there other things that you're working on in terms of your own development or areas of focus
Yes.
that you have?
Yeah, there's always, like, for me, I'm an evidential medium, and
Mhm.
so evidence is big for me. I like to get as much of that as possible so the person sitting in front of me has no doubt. And so yeah, there's a couple things I'm trying to work on right now. For some reason, I don't do as well with stuff like I want to say occupations. I don't know why. But I seem to be very, like, I get in the ballpark, so I might be like, yeah, I know they're white collar, but I can't figure out, were they a salesman or did they have it doesn't always come that easy to me. Um, I would like to be able to, a lot of times for some reason, nurses, I pick up on those really quickly. Again, I don't know why, but that seems to be a pretty quick occupation I pick up on. But I'd like to be able to be better at that. I'd like to improve a little bit. Like, yeah, I'm working on animal names. I just think that it's really fun when you get the animal name. People just, whoa. Um, so I'm working on that, and I put the intent out to Spirit too. I ask, I say, this is what
Oh,
I
that's
want.
yeah.
You help me with this. Um, so yeah, so I have things that I think pretty consistently. I'm really good at seeing, what they look like, what they're wearing when they come through, their personality, the different objects they may have worn, tattoos, things like that. I'm pretty good. I think I'm pretty good. That's where I think I'm most consistent. Names, I do pretty well with names too of people. Um, but for some reason, I don't know what it is, but occupation, I choke up there, and I'd like to work on animal names. I'm trying to think where else. Um, but yeah, there's always something, right? There's always room for improvement. And I think at some point, numbers, I'm going to want to focus on numbers more. Like maybe an address or I don't, stuff like that. I think you got to aim high. And the worst, I've had people sit in front of me, and I'll say, hey, I'm going to get some evidence. I'm working on this one. Do you mind if I just take some shots with this? No worries if I miss. And they're always into it. They're always like, sure, oh yeah, anything we can do.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's just interesting, people's reactions to that. Like, they're almost like, oh, I didn't know you could do that to get better. It intrigues people.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are some of the things I'm working on with my mediumship as far as evidence. Yeah.
Those are very active activities. What about the passive? Do you sit regularly? Do you
Oh,
do things like that as well?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So getting quiet's really important. Even if it's only 5 minutes. I really try to do more than that. There was a time where I was probably getting a good 45 to 60 minutes in. I haven't, life hasn't allowed that. But 15 I'm doing pretty good, and I like to do what the British call sitting in the power,
Yes.
you know? Yeah, where you sit and you expand your soul visually, and then you picture the soul from the other side coming in, or the light coming in, and connect, and just sit with that connection, vision, envisioning that connection. Um, I think it's powerful. So yeah, I do that. And of course all those other things I mentioned, that self-care is important. And I even think taking breaks from mediumship is important too. As much as I love it, I think it's a good idea. You go on vacation, it's very tempting for me to want to still schedule, like it'll be, oh yeah, I could fit you in, that morning before I go hiking on vacation. And then I'm like, no, this is, it's a
It's my
chill out.
time.
It's
Yeah.
my time. And what I often find is it's helpful to take that break. I think some of my fear is that if I take the break, I come back and I'm too rusty. But you're not going to get rusty in 10 days. Well, I'm not. And usually when I come back from a vacation, that's when I have some of my best readings. Is yeah, because I'm rested. My brain hasn't, and some of my most challenging readings have been when I've had a really stressful week at work. So it really is about sitting, getting quiet, quieting your mind. Sometimes I got to do that with music. If my mind is too busy, one of the exercises I look, Colin Bates actually, was, yeah, right. He's a great guy. And he had us one time, we were in a training, and he played symphonic music, and he had us focus on one instrument throughout the whole song. So, and it really did. You were very focused on like following the horn or the violin or whatever it was. You weren't focused on anything else. It was a great way to just quiet your mind and get in a good space.
And build up that clairaudience as well.
Yes, yes. And
Distinction, right? The
concentration.
distinction. You get this massive information and frequency coming at you, but you pick one frequency to follow. Yeah.
And I think we did do a clairaudient kind of exercise after that. We had to
That's,
sit across from someone and then imagine a sound. So we had to first find the spirit, and then ask for a sound associated with them. It was, so that's, yeah, that was part of it as well.
yeah. Yeah, I love challenging myself. I continue to take classes for that reason as well. How else can I see this? Where else can I take this? And it's fun, as we talked about at the
It
beginning, right?
is.
It's fun
Yes.
to do because we love what we do. We love doing this work and making that connection. So I know what's really important to you too, from hearing you speak another time, is the power of love and the
Yeah.
need for the heart and the head to work together. And I know you have spoken at times about the teachings you received from the school of thought around heart math, and the
Right.
science, the research they've done. So this kind of ties in a little bit with the reason we want to sit in the power, and the reason we want to get our quiet minds, right? So we can
Mhm.
actually hear what the heart's saying. Talk a little more about that if you wouldn't mind.
So yeah, so heart math is interesting to me, and I haven't really studied with. I did go to like Greg Braden is really big with heart math, so I don't know him, but I've seen him speak several times. And but the website, the heart math, what they really talk about is, you have a whole bunch of neurons that run from your brain to your heart, and researchers used to think that, it was just like everything was brain based, everything was coming for the brain, and it does. The brain tells everything what to do, and they weren't realizing that there's a whole set of neurons that your organs communicate back up to your brain, right? So when I'm thinking things like, oh, that person's such a jerk, or or I get ticked off because I get cut off in traffic, that those neurons are traveling to your heart, and the heart's where the love center is. That's where that chakra, the chakra for love is as well. And so it communicates some things, and then the heart communicates back up to the brain, so you're kind of sending this junk to your love center, and then the love center's going, yeah, okay, I got it. This is icky. Um, and you really want it to kind of be the other way. The happier you can be, and the more that you can kind of, I guess, what would I want to say, strengthen that connection between the mind and the heart is, again, by being positive, blessing others in traffic instead of um, maybe not wishing them well. Um,
Right.
but yeah, science is crazy. And then with that heart math too, like they've shown that there's a whole electrical field, around your heart. And when you're happy and joyous and you're feeling free, that electrical field just grows, right? It expands. And when you are depressed and grieving and down on yourself, that electrical field shrinks, it becomes less powerful. And again, I kind of bring in the chakras with that too, because that's where that love is, right? And so you really, I think it's very, very important to expand that energy and have that positivity in your life. So yeah, and then heart math is really cool because they talk about like communities where they have people, I think, God, it's been a while, but where they had them meditate, I think, for a certain amount of time at the same time every day. And
Global
they were,
Consciousness Project, I think they called it.
what's it called?
Called the Global Consciousness Project.
Yes, yeah.
I think there's
And
a
they can,
YouTube video on it. If you
mhm,
search Greg Braden and that, I think they'll
yeah.
come up. They talk about that. Yeah.
And they can actually measure the electricity in that area, which I find, I mean, that's fascinating because it's kind of like science is confirming something
Yeah,
there. I mean,
they proved distant healing, right? Where
yes,
someone was way across on the other side of the planet, and somebody was in a room with this calibration machine that had been created and proved that as that person was sending healing to that woman, she was getting some sort of response from it
yeah,
by the
yeah,
machine. The machine measured that response and saw the change. Very
yeah.
fast.
It
Yeah.
is, it really is. So I always think of that, and I think, the power of intent, that they've had those experiments where they have two plants, right? And the plants are getting the same amount of water, the same amount of light, yet one plant is labeled sweetie and the other one is labeled demon. And the demon plant starts to perish because everybody walking into the hallway, they say, go, ooh, demon. And oh, sweetie. And it's energy. And so I think it's important that we we certainly want to help each other with those kinds of things, but I think it's also to be aware that people may be sending some negative energy our way, and how do we protect ourselves? Not that I don't feel like I need protection in the sense that some evil is coming my way, but I think you can protect yourself from negative energy. I think there's certain, and this would be another topic other than mediumship, but I'm really into Donna Eden's energy medicine,
Oh yeah.
and she talks about things like there's a simple thing called the zip up where you do that and it helps protect you from, like, someone gives you a dirty look. And there's been some really interesting, there's, if you've ever been in an energy medicine like demonstration where it's really remarkable. They do this energy testing with your arm,
Oh yes.
and
Kinesiology.
yes, with the
Yeah.
kinesiology. And they, they'll have someone look you up and down the wrong way and energy test, and your arm easily goes down. And then they do just the opposite. They run their eyes up and wish you well, and the arm is strong again. It's bizarre. I mean,
Well, if that bad look could make a plant perish, right?
right.
Imagine the power. I mean, we talk about this in spiritualism, right? The thoughts are things, and that we affect our world around us. We create we're co-creators in our world,
Yeah.
right? How we think and how we act and how we respond, what we believe, what our limits are. So my mind went to when you talked about that plant perishing. The innocence of the plant. It's got me thinking about the innocence of children.
Yeah.
And you've worked with children in very difficult situations in maybe both hands-on as well as administrative capacity, but you've seen a lot of trauma and you've seen the circumstances they're in. And so what has been your experience over the years of making those connections and realizations? And I can only imagine that I would feel powerless at times. I would want to help those children, and I would feel so powerless. And yet, all this lesson that we get, this repeated lesson we get from spirit that says we need to trust, there's a bigger picture there, can make it a little easier to see those circumstances and say, okay, I'll do my part.
Yeah.
But would you talk a little bit about that experience, and if there's, how you might have reflected on that yourself?
I think for me, with when you work with kids who have been challenged with traumatic experiences, um, there's a lot of things that come to mind. First is anything they do to you, you can't take it personally
Oh,
because they're on automatic.
right,
They're probably very, very tuned up as far as their reactivity because they've had to be reactive in their environment. So
right.
you have to just kind of, let that kind of stuff go. And I think
Mhm.
that as hopeless as sometimes it looks, if you can be the light, right? If you can be that person, sometimes that's what they have. That's what they have to kind of cling on to. So and you don't always hear about it. That's the thing is you go in, you do the work, and it's sometimes it's rewarding and sometimes it's thankless. I mean, it is, but you never, I always say when I was training, because I train teachers too in social emotional stuff, and they'll say, oh, well, what's the use? They come in here for 8 hours and then they have to go home to that. And I'm like, well, you're right. In a lot of ways, you're right. You can't undo what's happening in the home, but you never know. You might be that person that they look back on and say, you're how I got through. You're
Mhm.
how you just never know. And I can tell one story where there was this young lady, and she was 5. She's a young lady now, but but at the time she was 5 years old. Horrible circumstances. I won't go into detail, but pretty bad. And one of the worst cases I've seen. And she would bang her head. And she had gone into the office and refused to get out. And when the office person was doing her best, and the little girl, no, 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 and she took her head, and bam, she starts banging her head. So I ran in, and I had to kind of put her in one of those holds, and she was swearing at me and hitting her head on my shoulder, and I just kept rocking and breathing and saying, you're going to be okay. And that's all I did. And most of the time I was quiet, and had to do that several times during the course of the her being at our center. And she gave a speech. I got to hear her high school speech because she graduated, did quite well, went on to medical school. This is a girl that doctors said had so much damage from banging her head that she wouldn't, get past 8th or 9th grade. She's in med school. She's pre-med now. And she said it wasn't at the graduation. She came and spoke at our center. She was like a keynote. And she said there were people along the way, like Mr. Flynn. And I was like, what? Like her foster mother was amazing. And I know she gives her a lot of the credit. That's who I give all the credit to. But she was like, and I asked her afterwards, I said, I said, I was humbled. I can't believe you, out of all the things, you singled me out. And she said, you were the first person that was able to stop me from banging my head without screaming and yelling. And I felt safe when you held me. And I, right? What do you do with that? You're just like, who knew? Because I would have never guessed. I would have never been in the top 100 even. you
Yeah,
know, but that's what I say to people is you don't know.
yeah, you
You
don't.
don't know when you're going to do that thing or be that person in the moment that child needs you.
Wow.
She also knew I was the one that, I guess this came to her later, that I was the one that advocated. Um, the kids were in a horrible situation and they needed an advocate. And so I had to I went to the line for them. She didn't know that in the moment, but she found out later. So yeah, it was one of those things.
And I suppose if we try to premeditate everything we're going to do has an effect on someone, we'll drive ourselves crazy. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
okay, if I do this, it's going to have an effect.
Right. You
Um,
just don't know. You just got to do what
oh
you got
no,
to
you
do in the
just got to
moment.
stay with your values and know that intuitive part of yourself. So as mediums, right?
Yeah.
We just need to keep doing our personal work because that being happy, like you said earlier, being happy is an important component. Tell us a little more about um, what you're doing on this project for being happy. Is there anything you can share at this point, or is it too soon?
You mean the one I might do?
Yeah, you had mentioned it, so I started getting
Yeah.
nosy.
So I did actually do the training, I think for Lilydale in like 2020. It was just after COVID. Things were just kind of opening up. Because I remember I had a kind of I think I had like 14 people or something like that, but it was called Igniting Your Inner Happiness. And so that's the one I was been talking to Fran about doing maybe in the spring. I got to see what my calendar looks like. And again, it's just 3 hours, but it is really about looking at what are different areas in your life where you can be happier. And by areas, I don't just mean like, well, my work life, my home life. It's really about looking at how we think, how we what's our demeanor when we wake up in the morning. And if we are one of those, oh, I always wake up on the side of the bed. Well, sorry, no, that's not going to work, because that's where it all starts. It all starts, every moment's a moment to have a positive thought. And so you want to, and again, I'm human, and I'm not a morning person. So I know from experience, my first thought in the morning is, oh crap, I can't believe the alarm's going off. But I correct that really quickly. It's kind of like, okay, what do I got today? What's going on? What do I got to be grateful for? That it's that kind of stuff. So it's about promoting optimism, gratitude, finding happiness in the moment. I'm trying to think what else is in that. There's a lot. It's 3 hours of talking about being happy.
Well, it sounds, I know, it sounds like 3 hours well worth exploring just so we can learn how to keep ourselves happy. I mean, with what's going on in the world right now, with
Yeah,
the amount of depression that we're hearing about, the mental health issues coming up, how easy it is for us to slip into, especially us sensitive, I don't know if that's good grammar,
yeah,
but those of us that are sensitive, we pick up on stuff and we don't even know sometimes. I mean, we go out and make our effort not to carry other people's stuff and clear our
hmm
energies and all of that. But sometimes we still are subject to it.
that's
And
right.
we can easily have it just kind of wish by us and we just take it in and think it's our own. It's like that slow frog in the pot boiling. We just miss things sometimes.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. You can get caught up
Yeah. You
and
know what I mean by the slow frog in the pot boiling, right? I'm wondering if my listeners know what we're talking
you might want
about.
to explain. I do, but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So a frog, I don't know what the origin is, and I would tell you if I knew. But there's a pot of water on the stove. You put a frog in it, you turn the heat up. The frog will stay and end up cooking because it doesn't realize as the temperature is rising up that it's actually getting too hot for it to handle because
hmm
it's happening so slowly and gradually. And then there's the other alternative where you put your pot of water on, you let it boil, and then you throw the frog in. The first thing the frog does is jump out because they recognize right away this is too hot and they jump
Yep.
out. So that's why I say sometimes we're in the mix of the energies around us and we just end up being that frog in the pot that's in the slow water boil.
Yeah. Yeah, right. And
So
and
we
it
do need to be vigilant and come back and check in and say, okay, where am I now? Where am I now? And so, like you said, every morning sounds like a great time to do that.
yeah.
Take that time. So, Happiness Project.
Yeah, well, the book, right? There's the Happiness Project.
Oh, there's a book called
There's
that?
a book
Okay.
called The
I
Happiness
was not
Project. Yeah.
aware.
Mine
Oh,
was Ignite Your Inner Happiness. The only reason I know that is because I pull in some of her research.
oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
So it's a
Well,
good
thank
book.
you for
Happiness Project is a good book.
go with it. Okay,
It's
good.
basically the author wrote about taking a year in her life to get happier, and how she did that and why she did it and what that journey was like. And it's a very good book.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I'm looking
Yeah.
forward to hearing it from you. So I hope you go
So
forward with that project.
we'll try. Yeah.
We can always use a
Yeah.
little hint along the way to keep ourselves up.
I know now I have to email Fran and
I know I've kind of forced you to it.
now I've got to
I
send her
didn't
that.
really have that as a pre-motivation, but sorry.
I say,
It sounds great.
whatever gets you there.
And our listeners can join us and we'll have a good
Because
time.
she was the one, she said she nagged me. She didn't. Um, she really didn't. But she did ask several times. She's like, so when are you going to do these mediumship classes, Jim, for Lilydale on Zoom? They went really well last time. And I kept, you get busy and I kept going, oh, Fran, I'll get you some dates. I'll get you some dates. And she finally was able to pin me down. And of course I did that first class in January and I love teaching those things. I mean, so I was like, my God, why didn't I make this a priority? So this is probably the same.
Anyway,
It's meant to be, right?
yeah. So if people want to get a hold of you specifically for an appointment or to check out what you're doing in your classes, where do they go to find you?
So they can go to my website won't hook them up to things, but it'll give them my email.
Okay.
So and it's James G. Flynn .com
Okay.
is the website. And then my business email is jgmfly@gmail.com. So James George JGM Fly at gmail.com. And so
Okay.
they can contact me there, and actually email is the best for me because I still set all my own appointments because I do this part-time. I have that 40-hour job. So
Right.
I do have a bit of I don't call it a waiting list, but I'm booked out pretty far because of that.
Yeah. Okay.
And so email is the best way for me to keep track of appointments. I'll be totally honest when I say people that text me, I have lost those because I get a lot of texts anyway.
Good to know. Yeah.
Yeah, so the email is the best. I think some people get a little frustrated because it feels slow. But once I go full time, I think once I retire from the job I'm in now and I go full time, I'm going to get a lot more. You'll be able to go online, click something, and you'll be able to schedule with me.
Are
Which
you scheduled? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
the other thing, another easy way to schedule a face-to-face if you're in the Cleveland area is through there's a store that gives me office space. They own a space next to their store and they let me use an office there, and it's Goddess Elite. So you go to their website, I think it's goddesselite.com, and you can book with Jim, and it's really easy. It's
Oh,
really
nice.
easy. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. Beautiful. I'll put all of that in the written areas of our posts
Oh,
so you
thanks.
can access it. Yeah, absolutely. And I was going to ask you, are you speaking? I know last year in April you spoke at the Church of the Living Spirit. Are you scheduled to do any speaking this year?
I am. Yeah, I'm speaking there in April again. I don't know the date.
Okay. So
I know if
watch
you go to
the
their
Church of the
website.
Okay, so watch the Church of the Living Spirit.com website or
Mhm,
go to the Lilydale page, or sorry, Lilydale page might have it as well, but the Church of the Living Spirit page
mhm,
on Facebook, because they'll announce you ahead of
yep,
time. So we'll
mhm,
be able to find you there. And then they'll actually do a live, if you go to the website, you can get live access
mhm,
to your talk, right, during that
yep.
service. And then
And
they
then
can
I'm
also,
serving Spirit as well. So,
yes.
yeah,
So if you
so it'll
come
be
to
both.
church, if you actually go there in person, you'll get the opportunity to see you serve in mediumship.
Yep.
Are you coming in the summer to do any services at the open outdoor services
I'll
or
be
at
at this. Oh
the
yeah.
service? Yeah, great,
Yeah, for sure.
great.
Yeah, I always come up to Lilydale in the summer. In fact, the only time I missed was that year of COVID, right? Where
Oh, great. Yeah.
nobody was allowed to go anywhere.
Yeah, I
So
know.
that was the weirdest year because that was I gotta say in probably 15 years, that was the first year the only year I haven't been. So yeah, I'll be serving Spirit at the Stump. Um, and I go to Forest Temple and do all those. I have a good
So
time
on the
doing
week
that.
I'm sharing, and then we can share
I
together.
will, yes, and we can get
Yeah,
together and do dinner or something. That would be
yeah,
great.
that'd be nice.
Yeah, and nothing though. So in the past, I did serve in the auditorium a couple times for Church of Living Spirit. Um, that was really a thrill, right? Did that that was on a Sunday service. That was really fun. And but I don't have anything like that unless they contact me and they want me to do. some of those maybe at the 2 o'clock or a Sunday service or whatever, but I'd love to. I'm always ready. I'm like,
Yeah, and you announce
I,
this on your Facebook page then?
I
Your Facebook,
did I
these
did
things?
not. Oh yeah, yeah, I usually do put it on Facebook if I'm
Yeah,
doing it. Yeah, yeah,
that'll help
almost
people find you.
always.
Good,
Yeah.
awesome. Excellent. Well, I'm so delighted to have this time with you, James. This has been
Same. Yeah, this has been great.
wonderful. Yeah.
I was like, I thought, oh, what are we going to talk about for so long? I could keep going. You got me wound up here, Kathleen.
Always. That's wonderful. I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad you had fun with us.
I did.
And listeners and viewers, I hope you've enjoyed our time together. And please do tune in a couple of weeks for another episode. In the meantime, you've got all the information here on James. This is replay. You can replay this anytime, so you can go back and hear anything that he has to say. And if you're interested in anything else about Lilydale coming up, they do have classes, as James mentioned. He's got one coming up February 10th. Is that a prerequisite? Do you need to have the January to go take this one in February?
Not really.
Not really.
The I would say no. The January one was it is best. I'll just say that. So the
Okay.
ideal would be to take January and then take this one, but you don't necessarily have to have done that. So feel free to jump right on. We are just going to do a quick review of what we did in January, and very quick, just
Okay.
so people can get caught up. And February will be fun because it's going to be mostly experiential. It's going to be, here's some instruction, here's some technique. Now give it a shot.
Yeah.
And so people like that. People like to have fun with
Yeah,
it.
so they should check it out. You can get to it by lilydaleassembly.org, and then they have the virtual classes, and then they'll find you there for February 10th. So yeah, go ahead and rush down to register that before all the seats are gone. And we'll look forward to talking to you again someday, James. And thank you,
Yes.
listeners and viewers. I wish you all the best in the world. Stay well.
Thanks.